Bobby, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and kind of chat about such an important issue right now in the Queens community. So I was hoping you could start by just kind of telling everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience as part of equity-seeking groups within the Queens community.
Of course. So I was born and raised in Toronto, in East York specifically. I'm currently entering my third year in commerce, and I'm hoping to also pursue a dual degree in history. A little bit about the work I do at Smith and at Queens. So I'm currently involved in the Reform Smith group, but prior to that, I was really focused on actually just creating dialogue within our community, right? I noticed that there was sort of like a culture of silence. A lot of people weren't comfortable talking about equity issues. And so part of my work focused on, highlighting the problems, really using facts to sort of support my ideas, and then letting people decide for themselves how they want to think. So I've really taken that philosophy to heart through the work that I do currently on Reform Smith, as well as co-chair of the Queens Business Review, just to, continuously engage in dialogue, try to change some hearts, try to change some minds, but also, by speaking, you actually create a lot of ideas, and that's, I think, is really powerful. So a little bit more about like how I feel about equity work at Queens and at Smith. I think that there's a lot of love and support. Like a lot of the students there really do care about the school, and they do care about BIPOC, QT BIPOC students. And I think that is like quite unprecedented coming from, a time where talking about these issues was quite taboo, and there was like a lot of people that weren't coming out of the woodwork to support. I think there's a lot of powerful voices that are arising right now. A few that come to mind, like Kelly, Nina, Aisha, and Omar from Commerce. But then also like outside of Commerce, like one student that really like spoke out to me or like popped out to me was Ampai Tamamachek. Sorry if I'm not saying her last name properly, but she is like seriously owning it and doing some really incredible work. I think that there are some difficulties as well. The school has like this big black box over that's covering all of the equity work that they're doing, and they're not really engaging students as much as we want. So I think that like moving forward, there should be more transparency, but that is like a huge struggle and a huge obstacle that is stopping a lot of the work that needs to be done.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I love all the work you've done. We've been following it closely, and you are, I mean, kudos for everything you've done for all of these groups on campus. But you mentioned kind of the importance of mentorship, so to speak. So coming to Queens and meeting people who are just so powerful in helping this experience. But how has the closure of schools as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic kind of impacted this experience on equity-seeking groups, especially for incoming students who maybe didn't have the opportunity to meet people coming in previous years?
Yeah, definitely the COVID pandemic has been hard for a lot of us. But actually, I think that a lot of the work that we're doing now is amplified because of COVID, right? We're able to actually engage with a lot of other students and alumni from across the world and across Canada that otherwise, we might have not had that opportunity had we stayed on campus. I know that for me, like my biggest support group is my friends, right? So I do a lot of my work through my friends, but having this opportunity to do things digitally has led me to expand that network and really engage with different thought leaders and activists at our school. I think one of my biggest concerns, although stemming from the positives, is people's mental health. I think it's really difficult now to gauge how people are doing and to check in on people all the time digitally, because I just don't see that as the same as talking to people in person. So I really do worry that through the stresses of the pandemic, as well as the isolation and the stresses of doing equity work, that people's mental health are really suffering.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And something that we really want to focus on through our blog is providing those resources, especially for students who aren't aware of stuff like the Student Wellness Center and kind of other resources that we have on campus for that support. That's something that we really wanted to kind of raise awareness for. But kind of, we're going to come back to that in just a second with kind of what students on campus can do. But I just wanted to ask you a quick question about your work on QBR. You mentioned you're a co-chair, and once again, we love your work. I was wondering if you think that you might be able to touch upon the role of media as kind of a pivotal player in informing and shaping opinions on such important issues around the Queens community.
Yeah, definitely. Just first, I'll give a little background of like what QBR is and like what we do. So I'm co-chair along with Raisa Sayed. She is awesome. She's killing it. I love her. And essentially what we are is a business magazine. But this year we've really expanded it to be more than just a business magazine. We really want to be a voice for all of the students. I think that there is a big lack of that within commerce specifically, just because like Q Journal is not as accessible to students as we think it is. So having our own sort of, publication centered on talking about student issues and spreading student ideas is quite powerful. And that ties directly into why we do what we do, right? The power of media. I think it gives a voice to the voiceless, but it also doesn't shy away from exposing the truth, right? I think a lot of the most important work that journalists do is allowing people to have a platform to speak out and to share those powerful ideas and then push the conversation forward, right? And then something interesting that we've observed at QBR is that, a lot of people actually are afraid to, express a certain opinion. I'll be specific. I know a lot of students with conservative views think that Queens is a hostile environment to them, right? So something interesting I've seen is the more, a certain group inhabits a space, right? Like a lot of people will say, okay, the Q Journal is too liberal or the QBR is too liberal. That actually like excites opposing views and makes them want to like engage because like, oh my god, I don't want you to like hog the limelight, right? And I think that's actually quite powerful because having that like harvesting those opinions and having that open environment eliminates that self-censorship, and that's something that we really want to try to push forward in QBR. So one of the biggest initiatives that we're doing is trying to be as impartial and unbiased as possible. So not censoring people for their views. I myself personally do not engage in anything, like I do not censor external submissions, I don't censor my editors, and we hired like a really, really diverse cast of people from very diverse backgrounds. So hopefully, through constant work and constant iterations, as well as focusing on transparency, I think that we'll be able to achieve something on the lines of like a really powerful platform for students. I want to touch on one danger that I see. Something that's like quite worrisome for me is also, this idea of cancel culture and that how damaging it is for journalists and writers. When certain topics become too taboo, right? When certain ideas become off limits over whatever reason, I think to punish people for writing about that, to punish people for expressing those opinions, is super worrisome for me. And I think that that's something that, we as a society, we as a school need to work on. And the best way to do that is through actually discussion, right? So to not even have those discussions and to not even engage in them, I think that is like the one thing that we want to avoid. So hopefully QBR can be a platform for that and actually, help that situation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the hardest part is starting to have these conversations that were so difficult, not too long ago. And I love what you said about giving people a voice. That's so important, especially, at Queens where, it might be kind of predominated with certain cultures or certain races. And, the platform you have is just, it's invaluable. Going back to, I guess, your point about the impacts of remote delivery and especially on students' mental health, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind touching upon how students at Queens can actively be allies on campus and what resources you know of and maybe have used or have referred people to within the Queens community.
Yeah, I can touch on a few like powerful ideas to really take into heart. The number one thing is to like educate yourself, like learn, right? A lot of us are afraid to like sort of expose ourselves to different ideas and different concepts. So I think the best way to get across that is to take on the initiative yourself to really try to learn about different topics, learn about ideas that make you uncomfortable. Definitely within the realm of equity work, a lot of people are just too afraid to even act on it because they don't want to say the wrong things. They don't want to do the wrong things. So there are so many resources. I definitely, will provide you resources if you ask for them, or even summarize them for you. But, having that, leg up on equity work and understanding those concepts really help you be a good ally and be a good activist. The second thing I would say is form your own opinions, right? You don't have to have the same ideas as everybody else. And I think it's actually quite dangerous if you do. Um, your lived experiences are the most important things to you. So apply those experiences to your learnings, right? And then form your own opinions and form your own ideas and then apply that to your work. That is like the best way of going about it, right? Something someone really powerful really told me was, the idea of doing a land acknowledgement, right? And they told me that each professor, and this is being proposed at Smith, by the way, or actually, I think it's being implemented right now. So mandatory land acknowledgements before every class. Instead of having just a mundane, like normal, standard land acknowledgement, each professor should talk about a land acknowledgement in their own realm and their own subjects, right? And how, say if you're a finance professor, how finance impacts indigenous communities, etc., right? And that is powerful because that gives your own perspective. And I think finally is try to work within your own communities to affect change, right? We're all a part of clubs. We all lead clubs. We all lead friend groups or are part of friend groups. So try your best to understand your role in all of that, the bigger picture, but then work within a sort of microcosm of your own space. Be introspective, address gaps in your culture that you're perpetuating. Don't be shy to ask advice from people, right? Like reach out to your peers and reach out to thought leaders within our school, and they can definitely give you resources to help you.
That's great. Thank you so much for all of that, Bobby. And again, thank you for taking the time today. I guess just if there's anything else that you kind of want to add or share with our blog.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice I have for students is you really want to embody this idea of inclusivity. And what does inclusivity look like? It's not just BIPOC or QT BIPOC, right? It also includes people like white people or people who don't actually, encompass those identities, right? And the worst thing that we can do, and the thing that goes against the progress that we're trying to make, is to alienate other people, right? So I really am of the belief that when we're crafting policy, when we're crafting ideas, that we include everybody, and that we're not trying to single out anybody in our work, right? And I've learned this the hard way, through my article. There was a lot of criticism that stemmed from me like singling out certain populations, and I definitely found that, by removing yourself, by stepping back and really seeing how your work is impacting others and how people think about your work, that makes your work even better, and that really pushes the barrel forward in what inclusivity really should be like. Another thing I would say is, yes, change is slow. It is so long to change people's thoughts and change people's ideas, and it's kind of agonizing in that how slow it is and how things are certainly not changed in the past 10 years or even 5 years at Queen's. But I do think that while it is slow, we can create change in our own way, and small changes, be it in your friend group or in your club, that is really impactful to people, and that is really what matters. And I'll finish off by this. I think through all of this, the best thing we can do is just recognize people's humanity, right? The one thing that people want is nothing more, is to be respected for who they are and for their identities. And what does that mean? It's respect people's history, respect people's lived experiences, respect people's identities, and And once we do that, I think the work that we do is going to be 10 times as powerful or even more and touch so many more hearts. And that is something that, I really strive for, and I hope a lot of other students do as well.
What a great way to, to leave us off, Bobby. Thank you so much again for meeting with me today and sharing all of this. I'm so excited to put this together and share our conversation with others.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.